Information fueled.
Opinion driven.
This is Nashville's Morning News with Dan Mandis.
And so, my fellow Americans,
We talk news.
6:07, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. And welcome on in to your Thursday, April 24th of 2025. So coming up at 6:36, we do have some developing stories regarding Donald Trump and tariffs. That is going to come up at about 6:36 or so. And also the latest on Kilmar Abrego Garcia. That is also coming up later this hour. But right now, James O'Keefe is at it again. I love this story for so many different reasons. You know, in the last hour, we were talking about the media. And we were talking about why the media has lost its credibility. The reason why the media has lost its credibility is because they're not doing the job that they should be doing. You know who's doing that job? People like James O'Keefe. Now, he is uncovered, and if you don't know who he is an intrepid journalist, and he does a lot of these kind of undercover stings, and he has uncovered a deep state operation to resist President Donald Trump and target Pete Hegseth. This is, of course, in the Department of Defense, the agency that Hegseth leads. And so what O'Keefe does, undercover reporter, and he gets people to talk. So, for example, and it's always the same thing. You get some person, it's usually a guy, and they're out on a date. It's very targeted. And they're out on a date in a bar somewhere, and the person who that person is on the date with gets them to start talking. For example, there's a guy named Nicholas Terza. He is a branch chief with the Department of Defense, and he's on a date with an O'Keefe operative who is a woman, and she just gets him to start talking. And it's always these guys who feel the need to start talking big when they are talking about their jobs. And this dude starts going off about Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth.
We're going to resist everything he does.
James O'Keefe here in Arlington, Virginia, in front of the Pentagon. The branch chief inside the Pentagon saying on hidden camera he's going to resist against Trump and Hegseth.
So he's going to resist. Now, that's important because a lot of this, you know, when I play you some of this audio, it's sort of just like the drunk guy at the end of the bar. And he's talking smack about Pete Hegseth. He's too young. He's not smart. Donald Trump is immoral. All of these things, they have a right to their opinion. But when you have a branch chief with the DOD saying they are going to resist everything that Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump do, well, that's when you have to start paying attention. Now, we already know that the DOD has had a lot of leakers, and there has been a lot of resistance to Pete Hegseth.
There's some type of deep state forces that want to make sure you don't stay there.
They've come after me from day one, just like they've come after President Trump.
Yeah, that is Hegseth, and he's been talking about this. Now, we all know that there's a deep state. The deep state was exposed by Donald Trump. We all know that there is a swamp, and we've seen this kind of thing before, where you have operatives within an agency. Think about the FBI, and they are targeting, resisting, trying to set up the president of the United States. And so this feels oh so familiar. All of these people within the DOD that are resisting Donald Trump, resisting Pete Hegseth, they are part of the DC apparatus, and they have been for years and years. And I do believe it when this guy says that, yes, they are resisting Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth.
Nicholas Terza, a branch chief within the DOD, expressed dissatisfaction with his new boss, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, claiming he is too young for the job.
So I'm assuming that your boss isn't Pete Hegseth then.
Ultimately, he is my boss.
Okay.
But this is insane. I actually know Pete Hegseth.
You do?
Yeah, you do. You see how this works, right? A guy on a date with a pretty woman trying to, have a lot of bravado, trying to impress the girl. And so part of this discussion is this higher up in the DOD bashing his boss.
Like, nobody I know should be the Secretary of Defense.
Oh, no.
Like, he's insanely young to be and he wasn't that high up in the military. He used to be in the DC National Guard.
Now, look, people, and by the way, Hegseth, Laura Loomer reported today, Hegseth has seen this tape and seen this report. And I think it's going to be a long day for this Terza, I think, what is it, Nicholas Terza? So now people talk all the time. This is where I was going with before. People talk all the time about their work. They speak about their bosses. So I don't really see any crime here with talking trash about your boss and talking trash about Donald Trump. But the big deal here is that he is actually saying that they will resist Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth at every turn.
Terza also saying on hidden camera he did not know he was being recorded, that Trump is an illegitimate president, an immoral dictator, and they plan to resist everything Trump does.
Yep, that is important.
We're going to resist everything he does.
We're going to resist everything that he does. That is what Nicholas Terza had to say. And so that now, when you see that does raise alarm bells. And it's funny because this guy goes on to say, and the audio's not great, and with James O'Keefe it never is because they're in a bar setting, but this dude goes on to say that Donald Trump lacks any kind of morals or moral values, as he is the one resisting Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth and their policies. A president who was elected by the people of this country on those policies.
Hey, guess whose LinkedIn profile is missing?
Nicholas Terza.
Yes. Gone.
Well, you know what? I think he's going to be looking for a job very soon, so he's going to have to post it back up. You know what the sad thing is, Joan? Is that, this guy is going to be considered a hero.
Oh, in some circles, yeah.
In a lot of circles. And so I'm not real worried about, unless they can find something illegal that he's done, I'm not real worried about his future being able to get a job. But bottom line is, this does prove again that Donald Trump was right, because there are still people within the federal government that are out to resist him and out to get him.
We're going to resist everything he does.
A little bit more. Tulsi Gabbard in the news. And this is a very big deal. It is coming up next. It's all part of the deep state. And it's all straight ahead on Nashville's Morning News. 6:15, time to check the roads on WTN. 6:15, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. As far as your weather goes for this Thursday, we've got a high of around 80, possible thunderstorms as well. Thanks for listening to Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. One final point on all of this. Terza calling Donald Trump a dictator, saying Donald Trump's policies show him to be sexist, racist, and chauvinist. Now, can I ask a question? Just put aside the whole racism thing, which is like, we've all heard that before, and it is just a collective eye roll. But when this guy says that, Nicholas Terza says that Trump is a dictator and his policies show him to be sexist and chauvinist, how is that possible? Because the man literally is saving women's sports and women's spaces by keeping men out of them. So as usual, you've got a lack of logic with people on the left. So the question is, and remember, Terza is a branch chief with the Department of Defense. So he is a person of influence. So if you take him seriously, you understand that either he's talking big or there's something far bigger going on inside the Department of Defense. Now, remember, last week, a couple of people from Pete Hegseth's Department of Defense were fired. 3 people were fired amid increased scrutiny after the whole Signal chat controversy. So they are finding some of these people that are part of the deep state apparatus within the Department of Defense, and they are handling it. Meantime, this story. Tulsi Gabbard, of course, Director of National Intelligence, has now referred 2 people to the Department of Justice. This is breaking news this morning, for leaking information to the Washington Post and the New York Times. A third, by the way, is on its way. Now, we all know that the first Trump administration, they had a lot of leaks, and it really frustrated Donald Trump. We are now seeing the same thing here during his second term, and I love that Tulsi Gabbard is going after them. I think she created an entire team to find the leakers, and they have. Here's what she says. Politicization of our intelligence and leaking classified information puts our nation's security at risk and must end. Gabbard, who serves as the director of national intelligence, said as news of the pending charges broke, those who, and this is from Reuters, by the way, those who leak classified information will be found, will be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. Gabbard then went on to claim that the deep state criminals leaked classified information for partisan political purposes to undermine Donald Trump's agenda. And you know, it's funny because a lot of these folks that, I mean, it's just like that guy from the DOD that was going after Pete Hegseth, Nicholas Terza, because they believe that they have the moral high ground. Have you noticed this? We're protecting democracy, they'll say, and all of that BS, when in reality, they are the ones that are putting our nation at risk. They'll tell you that they've got the moral high ground when in reality they don't. And it is clear that they don't. And when she says that deep state criminals leaking classified information for partisan political purposes to undermine President Donald Trump's agenda is harming our national security, she is absolutely right. She says, I look forward to working with the Department of Justice and the FBI. We are going to investigate, terminate, and prosecute these criminals. And I love that. And apparently the information had to do with Israel and Iran. So good for Pete Hegseth. I love that James O'Keefe has been able to find this guy and expose at least some of the deep state that is going on within the Department of Defense. And I love that Tulsi Gabbard is tracking down these leakers, and they will face and suffer whatever consequences they have coming to them. 6:20 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. The Super Text line is open, 615-737-9986. All right, coming up, the latest on Kilmar Abrego Garcia. We have that story for you. We have a number of other stories for you as well. There was a story, and it's a great story, and I've got this coming up, where CNN basically did in my opinion anyway, it is a hit piece called You Call Yourself a Journalist. That's kind of what I'm calling it. And this guy on CNN, Donnie O'Sullivan, starts talking to the new media journalists there within the White House press corps. And they were so incredibly demeaning. So I've got a lot to get to on this Thursday. Joan Jones has a lot going on in the WTN newsroom. Joan, what's coming up at 6:30?
Yeah, you bet we do. So the push to push back on the Real ID deadline. That story is coming up here at 6:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.